Ever wonder what financial advisors have to say about money goals, the market, or economic issues? If you have, then this podcast is for you. Behind the Designs gives you a sneak peek into the internal conversations at Financial Design Studio. Michelle Smollenberger, a certified financial planner and the CEO here at FDS, will be your host and guide. Welcome to Behind the Designs.
All right, welcome to the new year. This is our first episode here in 2023, and we've got to start the year off right. I have Jake here with me today, so let's get started.
Hi, Michelle.
Before we make some introductions. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Irish.
Irish who?
I wish you a Merry Christmas.
That's good.
And a Happy New Year.
Oh,
We're in the new year.
All
right, ready?
Happy New Year, everybody.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Needle.
Needle who?
I need a little cash to pay for those Christmas gifts.
You and me both.
All right. Well, now we're into the new year. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of humor. I'm actually laughing pretty hard, trying to hold it back. Jake, welcome again. So today is interesting. We're going to talk through kind of like what we call a real life, a living example from a consumer, being a consumer of financial planning, or just you learning about your finances and moving to an advisor. So first off, so Jake is our associate financial planner. So you are learning all about, you have been learning all about financial planning the last couple of years and getting ready to sit for the CFP, the Certified Financial Planner exam in March. So you're studying a little bit right now.
Yeah, I'm studying a lot right now. Putting in, probably 20 to 25 hours a week, kind of ramping that up on top of a full-time job and trying to be a decent husband. But it's all stuff I love, and I'm just, I know this exam is a bear, as I've heard from many CFPs, including the 3 that are at this firm. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, sitting in March, and hopefully we'll pass.
You're going to do a great job. I mean, you're already studying as hard as you should be well before, so I think that's really good. You're going to do great. And if this is one of your first times listening, I'm Michelle Smollenberger, a financial advisor and CEO here at FDS. So just wanted to kind of reintroduce ourselves, because we know sometimes people start listening a little later on. Really what you are going to be able to take away from this is, if you have been working with someone, if you haven't, if you've had maybe a poor experience in the past, we have a lot of hope for you today. And we're really going to walk through Jake's experience from being a consumer to a financial advisor. And what I really want to drill into as you talk through this, I want to ask you a lot of questions about, how did you move in that process? How did you realize you needed to work with a financial advisor, or that you even needed to pay attention to your finances to begin with in the very beginning? So we're going to walk through that process, and you can hear that, and we hope that you learn a lot from this, so that, if you're stuck, you'll be unstuck. If there's something, maybe you had that poor experience, how can you move on? And, ultimately, as advisors, one of our biggest things is that we love helping people from where they're starting today. So there's no judgment for things you've done in the past. We're really starting from today. And so, we hope this is kind of like a fresh step. And it's so ironic that this is literally the first episode of the year. So this will be great. Jake, why don't you take us back to, was it 2-3 years ago that you really kind of started paying attention to your finances? Just kind of walk us through, that time and how you got started on this journey.
Okay. How far back should we go? All right. It was a spring day in the early 1980s. No,
that's great.
Yeah. So I would say, pay attention to, certainly I kind of always have, but I would say not to the level that I wish I would have, or maybe, had I connected with the right people earlier on in my career, that I would have been able to. But I, started working with a quote unquote, advisor, a friend of mine right out of college. And it was when I had my first, I started working in a different industry, and I started to make a little money, and, I can help you out with this stuff. I just invested a little bit into a taxable brokerage account. He was very keen on me getting, life insurance, and I didn't really understand. I was like, I have no dependents. I'm 25. Why would I need life insurance? So I didn't get it from him. Anyways, and I just stayed, kind of we'll call it dollar cost averaging, meaning, once a month, we'd put a little money in this taxable brokerage. And, that actually turned out to be a good decision. And so as I progressed through my career, I stayed with, I was working for a Fortune 100 company that I was with for 15 years. And so as, things get more complicated and, I got married and we combined finances and, it came to the point where talking with some friends and colleagues, it's like, oh, I'm working with this advisor. They help me with this, and this. And I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. So they made an introduction, and we met with this person a couple of times, and ultimately ended up saying, yeah, this all sounds great. Now, my wife and I had no idea what we were doing. Like this was, let's call it like 5 years ago, probably.
Okay.
And so we, signed on the dotted line, and then we were off to the races in motion.
So you got out of college, started working in a great job, and just had a good income, maybe saved a little bit, like doing a little bit into your 401k?
Yeah, I was definitely saving into my 401k. I couldn't tell you how much because I honestly didn't even know what it was.
Yep. So that's where
which a lot of people, I think.
I can relate to that. People can relate to that. So that's very normal. I'm doing something. I know I'm doing something, but I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, right.
So you're doing something, and then this point comes where, something, whether it's a life event, but for you it was, hey, we talked to someone and maybe we should be doing something. So now you're going to work with someone. How did that go?
So I'll take you into the more current situation. So about 5 years ago, it was interesting. So, we sat down, they wanted to know, all right, what's your income? Let's kind of roughly, what do you spend? And that was kind of the extent of it. There wasn't the in-depth, which I know we'll get into. It wasn't, hey, can I check out your last couple of years' tax returns, Social Security statements, any investment accounts that you have, what are your 401k options and how are they invested? It wasn't any of that. So it was really he was there to sell a product, whether it was the right product for us. I mean, in my opinion, didn't really matter. But, they're good at what they do. They made it sound great. We're going to get this great product that's going to not only protect our lives, but we can borrow against it, throughout our lives. And we're going to have all these, millions of dollars, when it's time to retire.
At the time, did you mentioned like there was a lot of things knowing now. They didn't ask for these things. Did you even think about that?
Not
Did you
at
even
all.
you were just like, oh, that's the questions that he needs. I guess that's what matters.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it. And, hopefully people out there can relate to this because this was my journey. And I mean, yes, I'm associate financial advisor now. I'm sitting for the CFP exam in March. Like if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I couldn't have told you what the difference between an IRA and a Roth IRA was. And so I think that's one reason maybe that people aren't as proactive, even maybe when they should be. It's like, I didn't know what I didn't know, and maybe I didn't want to reveal or show that vulnerability of things that maybe I should have done. Or when I'm comparing myself to people around me, I think this is a very common thing: is how do I stack up, against these other people? And so knowing that this person worked with some of my colleagues, maybe you want to seem like, oh, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So we're going to get into like some of those. You kind of started to touch on them. Some of these reasons that people either don't get started, don't work with an advisor, or don't like spend time managing their finances in general. So we're going to drill into that in a little bit. Okay. So you get started. Now, how did it go after that?
This is good. Yeah, this is good. So we get started, and so I bought a life insurance policy. It was a variable life policy. And, basically what that means is you put X amount into this policy, it grows a cash balance, and then, we'll provide not only, that cash is yours. You can do a multitude of things with it. We won't get into all the nuts and bolts, but, and then it's, if you were to die, your beneficiary, which is my wife, gets it. Now, we don't have kids, so, everything was going to her. And this is not, let me just preface this right now. Life insurance is an awesome product, and it definitely has a place in most, if not all, financial plans, I would say. Would you agree?
It serves a purpose.
It
Absolutely.
serves a purpose.
Yep.
But there are different types of life insurance for different situations. And, that's the thing that I wish I would have asked better questions at the time. But so yeah, we're going forward, and we're putting like a lot of money into this thing. Like, and me being naive, this is embarrassing, but I thought that quarterly chunk that was coming out of our bank account was going into our taxable brokerage, which this person was also managing. I didn't know that, holy cow, these is life insurance premiums. Like, so I felt maybe I didn't, I mean, obviously I signed all the paperwork, so it's my fault.
Sure.
But I didn't ask those right questions. And I think that's, that's common. And I've talked to so many, friends, people I run into that have similar stories to mine.
Yep. And I think that is the key, is you don't know. So at this point, like, you're starting to learn. You're starting to realize, wait, I thought this, but it was this. You're starting to make some of these connections. All right, so keep going.
Okay. So then I'm kind of scratching my head and asking some questions, but just not really getting answers, getting really frustrated. And then, I want to say that was really a, kind of a, I'll even call it like a pivot point in my life, because I started, consuming as much as I could about just personal finance. Like, what are all these different things? How do they all fit together? And this was really, centered around our family, my wife and I, and what can we do to set ourselves up for success? And so Michelle, I consumed as much as I possibly could. Like, if I wasn't working or actively engaged in a conversation, I was either listening to a book on Audible, listening to a financial podcast. I run, so every time I'd run, I would do that, listen to those podcasts while I'm running. People are probably like, you're nuts, but it was just a great way for me to engage with the content, reading blogs and checking out different websites. And the more I learned, the more I realized that I probably wasn't in the best situation with this financial professional.
Sure. And what you're identifying here, so everyone, this is different for them in their life. When we find something we're interested in, it could be a hobby, it could be a profession, it could be a career. In your career, you find things that you realize, I want to research this a little bit more, and this is like on the side because I want to know personally. There's so many things that we learn that increase the value of what we do in our everyday jobs. And so personally, and I think in what we do, it's a relationship business. We care about our clients. We're helping them. And so we walk through things in our lives that will affect how we help them talk about or work through things in their life sometimes. And so it becomes really meaningful, some of these things. So when you're talking about consuming everything, I mean, you really found something that you were really learning about, you were getting excited about. You're like, wow, okay, this is starting to make sense. So, I mean, it makes absolute sense that you're digging into this area. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah. And at the time, like, I had no intention of leaving my old career.
Yeah.
Like, saying, hey, maybe I could do this, as kind of a second career. That wasn't even entering my head. It was really, like you said, it was just, oh, I'm really passionate about this, and this is super interesting to me. So I'm really digging in. Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, so then, we'll fast forward a little bit. So I went ahead and at one point felt confident enough, to manage the brokerage account. So for those of you who I don't want to get too jargony, but that's essentially, it's not a retirement account. Anybody can open it. It's just basically you're taking money that you've already paid taxes on, so money that comes into your paycheck, and you're moving it to a Schwab or a Vanguard or a Fidelity, and you're opening up just a regular brokerage account, investing it into different assets. Okay, did I do a good job there?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, and so I felt like, all right, I don't need some, I didn't love where we were invested at the time, just meaning it was in a lot of high fee funds. The cost was not great for the performance. And so I was just like, I'll do this on my own. Did that first, tried to, was also interested in getting out of this life insurance policy, but ended up staying in it for another year after that.
Okay.
But I did also, as I'm researching, I'm like, how can I learn like this comprehensive knowledge? Like, what are the, what are you doing? What are the Michelles and the Trevors and the Rows? Like, what are they doing? And so I did a bunch of research and realized that a certified financial planner, or CFP, is kind of the gold standard for the planning industry. Now, not every person who is a financial advisor or a financial planner by title is a CFP, not even close to everybody, which is another issue for another podcast. But, that was something I looked into. So I looked around and I was like, hey, what if I just enroll in the intro class? The intro class, and we'll dive more into what CFP means later in the podcast. But it's your kind of first class. It's getting a feel for what is this career. You do go through general principles and some of the basics around time value of money stuff, how to calculate education and retirement needs. Just some basics. So I enrolled at Northwestern through their School of Professional Studies, and they're an accredited CFP program. And I basically went into it thinking, all right, 3 options are going to happen here. I'm either going to attend this class, learn a few things and realize, all right, I don't really want to pursue this any further. Or maybe I go through the entire curriculum and just have a ton of knowledge to help our family, my family, friends, just kind of be that resource, or 3, hey, maybe this spurs something that could be an entire new career. And so I think, we all know where this went.
Yeah.
The third option won
crazy.
out. I absolutely loved it. It was one night a week. And I did it for just under, it was like basically 7 quarters. So just under 2 years, 1 class per quarter. And, each was more interesting than the next. And I just couldn't wait to go to class, to study, to consume, to even take the test. So a little weird that way.
Okay. So I'm going to back you up a little bit.
Sure.
So when you were thinking, I'm going to take this, I'm just going to sign up for the first course. So what were like you and Katie talking about? Was she kind of like knock yourself out?
Exactly.
Or was she learning along with you? Or
No.
was this like you were really interested? This is another really common thing that we see when we work with clients. One spouse maybe knows a lot about finances, and that could be because their parents, their grandparents taught them a lot, maybe from a young age, or they've always been interested, so they read like blogs, they follow the market, whatever that is. So they may be really knowledgeable about one area, and then the other spouse may not. Or they may do more of the day-to-day spending. So they know, maybe more of your expenses. They know what you're spending. But the big picture, like insurance or investments, pieces like that, they may not. So that is very common. So I was just curious kind of, hey, what did that look like? Okay, so you're into this and you're like, I'm going to take these courses. In that process, you are working with an advisor. Walk us through, because I think a lot of people get to that point. They stop there. Like they're not signing up for courses, which
No.
I understand that. Obviously, you want to be passionate about it if you are. So you were working with someone. How did you kind of undo that, or what did you do when you realized this isn't for us?
Right. Well, yeah, it was basically kind of doing kind of a cost benefit analysis. So still had a hefty amount of cash into this life insurance policy. And I still do have a life insurance policy. However, I talked to the advisor about it, and as you can imagine, they really don't want you to get out of these policies. Now, you absolutely have a legal right to, but you need to, a few things. What is your, how much have you paid in? Are there going to be any taxes due if you do unwind this? Fortunately, I was in a position where, no, it was fine. It was all, we'd paid enough into where, we were able to remove it. Now, you don't get to remove the fees and the commissions, and that was a 5-figure sum that still makes me sick to my stomach. But, we were able to get the rest of the cash out, cancel the policy, and then immediately bought a 20-year term policy, that I'm paying pennies compared to what we used to be paying.
Yeah.
And I still have the coverage. It's the same death benefit. If something happens to me, Katie's still in a good spot. And so
how would you encourage people who realize or are thinking something similar to you, wait, I don't know if this is right for me, or I don't think it is, but they feel stuck. They feel like I have to stay in this because I got in it.
Right. I would say, first of all, evaluate if it is still, if it is the right thing for you. And, that could take a little bit of due diligence. This would be an opportunity to maybe, talk to a professional if you know one, just to get a second opinion. They may charge you, for an hour of their time, but it may be well worth it, to get that really kind of objective view of, no, this is a really good thing. And, it's based on your situation, this sounds perfect. So that's what I mean. Like everybody's situation is so different.
Yeah.
The point I want to make here is that did not make sense. The initial engagement and the product that we purchased did not make sense for our situation. And, it took a while for me to realize why and what to do about it. But I'm so glad that I did. So glad that I did. And I know there's other people out there. In fact, I have a friend. He lives in Colorado. We had a conversation a couple months ago. He's in the same situation. He's like, I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And so I was able to help him. I got to follow up with him, see if he did it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. So this is where I guess the hope in all of this is that you aren't stuck. You have options. So if this is something where you've realized, wait, this probably isn't the best path, or I'm not really getting answers to all of my questions, that's where you might be like, okay, I need to do something different. So this is helping us kind of walk through that. Okay, let's dig a little bit more into why people wait, or why people don't do something, or why people don't work with an advisor. You kind of started to touch on that, that even you, when you were talking with that first advisor, the first person who was selling you a product, that they were asking for certain information and you didn't know what you didn't know.
Right.
So you kind of just went in, okay, well, this is what they want. So what are other reasons that you feel like people don't work with an advisor? They don't reach out? Because one thing that we find is, everyone has to do, or most people have to do a tax return. They have to file it every year, and there's a deadline for that. But for a financial plan and to get started saving money, there's no deadline for that. So you either do it or you don't. But that is a big difference where there's no requirement to actually do it.
Yeah.
So why do people wait?
Hey, I mean, we could really, get philosophical here, but I think there's, a few things that come to mind is most people don't know what they don't know, or if this is an area of your life where you're like, I really 401ks, IRAs, insurance, Social Security, taxes, that's scary stuff. And I'm speaking from experience that was me in the past. You don't know what to ask. You don't even know where to begin, right? You Google maybe, financial help in my area, and you're going to get a litany of things. But I think it's important that if you are going down this road is figuring out what are the right questions to ask people. And that we'll touch on some of those towards the end. I think another thing is just, what is your history with money? If this was something where, your parents were really into it, or you had a circle of friends maybe, and this was very commonplace to talk about, you're going to understand a few more of these nuances than somebody like me, where my parents never worked with a financial professional. And we didn't really talk much about money growing up. So that was not something that was on the table. So I think, the way with which you're brought up, and I know we talk about this a lot with clients, is, trying to understand what their relationship is with money can really help. But, I think that's another thing. And then I would say even now, I think like in corporate America, I think talking about your own personal financial situation is still pretty taboo, right? Like people aren't discussing their salaries or, what they, how they're investing and things like that. Maybe if you're close with somebody, you may, but those aren't just like commonplace conversations that are coming up. So typically, and I think this is what, we've seen is typically there's a stimulus. There's some reason, some event, whether it's a birth of a child, right? That's a big change in your life. It's like, okay, now I'm responsible for this whole other human. I want to make sure that we can support them. That may be a reason. Or is it, oh man, I am, 60, I want to retire in 5 years, and I don't know what I'm going to do when my paycheck turns off. I know I've been saving money somewhere. I don't really know how to access it or taxes or any of that stuff. That could be another reason. Maybe a death of a parent, kind of makes you reflect whether you're inheriting something or not, or a spouse even. But I think there's usually some sort of, as with most things in life, right? We kind of start down one path until something pushes us the other direction and makes us kind of reevaluate things.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think we're listing all of these reasons. We're highlighting them because I think they're common and a lot of people have them. And you're exactly right. We didn't all grow up talking about learning, taking all of these basic financial classes, which, we argue should be part of our education, just basic education. And so it's really helpful, really just to help you relate and to say you're not alone and it's okay. Like advisors know this. We already know this. We already know that these are some of the hesitations. We're just waiting for people to say, I'm ready to get started so we can help you get started in the other direction and in the right direction. So no, that's really helpful. I agree.
Yeah. And speaking of that, like, we're not here to say, hey, every single person listening, you definitely need a financial advisor. Maybe you don't. If you've got time, you've got knowledge, and you have a real passion for it, a lot of these things you're able to do. But that's a small percentage of the population, right? Most people are really invested in their own careers, their own families. And so that's why having a financial professional, hopefully a CFP that you can work with, that can help kind of get everything in order for you and just calm the anxiety that you may have around, how am I going to retire? When can I retire? How am I going to pay for my kids' college? That's what a financial professional should be able to help you with, so integrating all that.
Yeah. So let's spend just a couple minutes here, and then we're going to keep moving on with kind of like where you're going, your journey, where you're headed. What are the questions or what is the information that financial advisors should be asking them to actually give them really comprehensive advice that's going to get them to where they want to go? What are some of those?
Well, I'm glad you're asking. I know you have thoughts on this too, but
lots.
So for me, I would say, if you're meeting, do your research, right? Take a look before you sit down and meet with someone. Can you find what the fees on their website? Does it show you what that entails? I would say that's probably a good step. Are there do they have any, reviews? Are you being referred? Anybody that you can talk to that has an experience with those people, and maybe you don't, and that's okay too. So then you go and you sit down with somebody, things that if they're trying to recommend something before they see your entire financial life, that would be a big red flag to me. So if they're, the way that it should be, a good financial planner will do this is they're gonna want a lot of information, and this, and it feels like a lot.
But sometimes that is the hurdle
That's
to
the
get
hurdle,
over
yeah.
is, wait, I have to find all of this information that I've never looked at for myself. But you are doing yourself a favor in going and getting that information because A, you may be looking at it for the first time, and B, now they're going to help you look at it and say, here's what I see in this information for you.
Yeah, I think you're right, Michelle. It can be daunting. Just like when anybody asks you, hey, we need, even like, just say you're not working with a financial advisor. I mean, just the effort that goes to get your tax preparer their documents.
Yes,
that can be a lot, right? I know that used to overwhelm me. Like, what? All this stuff?
It's that time of year again.
But they should be looking at your life. So let's look at the last couple of years' tax returns. Let's see what's going on there. You have a Social Security statement? Everybody does. I want to see that because that tells me your whole life. There's so many clues. There's a story in all these documents. Send me, your homeowner's policy. Heck yeah, I want to look at that. I want to make sure that we're covered here. I want to see your W-2. I want to see your bank accounts and your savings accounts and your investment accounts and your workplace 401ks. And I want to know what kind of compensation do you have? Do you get bonuses? How are they structured? Is it an RSU? Is it an ISO? Like what kind of stock are you getting if you're working for a company that gives that? So I want to know your insurance. Do you have life insurance? What about your estate documents? What are you planning for not only your life, but for your legacy that you're going to leave behind, and make sure that it's all done the way you want. So these are all things as part of a comprehensive financial plan that prior to any recommendation or product or plan, you need to know this stuff. Your planner, your advisor, they need to have all this information so that they can truly cater and customize the recommendations to your very specific needs.
Yeah, and I think with that, even in that process, it's interesting because it can feel intrusive of us asking. I mean, I know we have this list of documents that when we start working with someone, we say, here's all the documents that we need. Now, just like you explained, we say why we need them. Here's what we're going to look at. We're looking at those last 2 years of tax returns because maybe there was something that was missed. You would be amazed at how many kids that were born were left off a return, or just, little things like that, that it's money that you should have in your pocket, or maybe something wasn't quite handled right and you actually should have paid more in taxes. So those are the things we want to clear up. We want to take care of if it makes sense to. That's the kind of stuff. Now, it's funny that you mentioned no one should be giving advice, like when I think of these first conversations I have with people, like prospective clients coming in, and I am always really careful, I'm always careful to say, here's the types of things we're looking at, or here's, similar clients who have gone through these similar things, and that's what we're going to see if any of this makes sense for you. But I think back, like earlier this year, there was actually someone that I was like, this is free advice I'm giving you, and you may not even work with us. And because rates are so high, and this person had a lot sitting in cash, I didn't know where it was sitting, but I said, I bet that cash is sitting in a bank account earning 0%, like 0.01%. And they were like, you're right. And I'm like, get that out of there. It's got to be earning like 3%. So it's just even little things like that. These are like little freebies, that sometimes there are such obvious little things. So we're not even saying that it needs to be like these big, we find all this money or we can make you all this money. There's little, just very basic little things that actually make a big difference. And so it's interesting. Yeah. Like the advice you're getting from what you're telling them, that's the stuff you really want to pay attention to.
Yeah. And it's all based on your timeline. As we say, let's timeline your goals. What are those events coming up that you're going to need to fund? And then let's make sure that things are allocated appropriately. So when the event comes, no big deal. We plan for this,
Yep.
And that's what we say, we want to put a plan in place. Yeah, the plan's going to change. Life changes.
Yeah.
But at least you've got a framework and a direction for which you're going. And I think that's one of the huge values you can get from a really good financial planner.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the direction you're going.
Oh boy.
So in your studies, you're starting to study for the CFP. So walk us through this process. You took the courses. So you jumped in and you said, yeah, this is something I'm really excited about. So excited about it that I am going to switch careers. So talk us through what is a CFP? What are the things that you've learned are requirements? Because so a CFP is Certified Financial Planner. As you mentioned, there's not as many in the world that you would think, and not every financial professional has their CFP or is one. So walk us through why that's important, what's involved in that.
Yeah, well, in the financial services, there's a lot of different kind of titles out there: financial advisor, financial planner, financial broker. There's all kinds of different titles out there, and that's one of the things with this industry that doesn't really get scrutinized that much, I don't think. And so when I was going down this journey, and I'm going through these, and this is me, right? There's a place for all of this. If you're out there and you're selling annuity contracts, there's lots of people out there that really could benefit from that, but it's not everyone, right? And so that's what I think about, and what thing I love about Financial Design Studio, but I'm going off on a tangent here. So once I realized that this is something that I'm thinking about quitting my job and pursuing, that was a big decision. I mean, 15 years with a big company, had a great career, met so many great people, had great experiences there. But it was just when I looked into the future and said, if I'm still doing the same thing in 15 years or even 5 years, what's that going to look like? And I just didn't like the way it looked. So I was like, now's the time. Let's figure it out. Let's figure out how to start. Because I will say that's a daunting thing, coming from completely changing industries altogether, coming in from a professional with tenure to basically a brand new entry-level position. So that was there was planning and thought behind that. Support at home for sure. We've been good savers, and so it wasn't a financial issue. And so then I started looking, all right, well, where do I want to go? And I knew, just based on all the research I'd done, a couple of things. I wanted to work for a fee-only financial planning firm. I'd prefer not to work for one of the big names. I wanted to go to a smaller firm where I could really learn everything. And then, so I looked at, there was a couple different websites. I just perused. I wasn't in a hurry or anything. I was just, we'll see what happens. And then, when I saw the posting on the NAPFA website, which is a fee-only association here in North America, it was in, close to home. And so I just, threw it out there, and the rest is history. And so it worked out. I ended up, starting here obviously in September of 2022. And it's been truly life-changing. I mean, I love coming to work. I love working with clients. Everybody that we work with is great. And then just the cool thing about it is, everybody's so different and unique, and there's no one size fits all. It's like a puzzle, right? And we're all, all the time we're looking at, hey, what's the best thing for this person? And, how can we help them in this way? And so it's just, it's very cool.
No, I think that's great. Okay. So keep going with, how do you become a CFP? So you said they're not all the same. Right. So what is required to actually be a CFP?
Okay. So Certified Financial Professional, the CFP, the gold standard, as they say. There's basically 5 components to becoming a CFP. You need a college degree, so a bachelor's degree. It doesn't matter what it's in, but you need a bachelor's degree. You need to complete the education component through a CFP certified education course. There are a few universities who offer this. Michelle, I know Kansas State is one of those. Yep. University of Georgia. They're getting to be more and more. Or you can do it through, like I did, Northwestern School of Professional Studies offers it as well. And it's just, they're accredited by the CFP board to be able to provide this education. And then you go, and I'll talk about the education briefly. There's different components that you go through, like the kind of the general overview. You'll go through kind of the way the board operates, the different standards that you need to hold yourself to, and some of the kind of basics. You go into insurance planning and risk management. You do investment planning, investment management, and then you'll also get into income tax and income tax planning, estate planning, and then what am I missing? Oh, finally, retirement planning. So there's all these different components that go into the CFP curriculum. All right, so once you do that, then you need to pass the exam, which can be a big hurdle. They just had the November exam, and I was just looking through the results, I think they came out last week. It was around a 63% pass rate, I think. So
Okay.
it's not an easy exam. People spend years studying for this thing. But,
Yes.
it'll be, yeah. So anyways, then you have to get through the exam. You also need to have a minimum of 6,000 hours of experience. So that translates into roughly 3 years. So even if I'm fortunate and I work and I pass the exam in March, I still technically will not be a CFP until I fulfill my experience requirement, which I think is another great way to keep the CFP designation kind of out there. It's right. That's a lot of requirements right there.
Yeah.
And then finally, CFP ethics, you need to be able to, and I think you have to renew this regularly,
Yep.
is there's a board of
Every year.
ethics and code of conduct to act as a CFP professional and fiduciary. So that's the fifth part.
Yeah, at any point you could do things as a professional that could actually take away that designation. So
Oh, yes.
yes, so that's
and you
very
need to know all those.
exactly. So you'll be reviewing those furiously. I think that's the thing. Sometimes, as financial advisors, we get questions from people. Hey, see someone in the hall. Hey, I was just looking at something, tax, investment, something, and they'll ask you a question, and what should I do? And you just pause and you're like, well, it depends. And I hate that answer because we all hate that answer
Yeah.
when you hear it. And it's like a teacher, saying,
Right.
well, it depends. And I'm like, but it is true. Everyone is so unique. Everyone is their own puzzle, and it matters. All that information matters when you're actually building a plan for someone and continuing the ongoing planning as things change in their life.
Yeah. So be careful what you see out there. I know there's, on the financial news show, CNBC, and there's all these, do this, buy this. And they're not taking into account your whole situation. There's
No.
somebody that's like, Roth IRAs are the best. Well, for who? I agree. They are great, but not for, may not make sense for you to contribute to a Roth based
Yeah.
on other things. So just be careful when you get that kind of one size fits all advice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even as we talk about, like on these podcasts, we're saying all these things. We say, you may, you might, you could, we're so careful to use certain words. And it's only when we're working with a client saying, you should do this. We recommend this
Correct.
because we actually have engaged in the process of financial planning where we are getting paid to give you the advice based on all of this information that we are looking at specifically for your situation.
Right. Yeah.
So, no, that's great. And I'm sure infuriating for a lot of people who just want like a quick tip or, well, just tell me,
Yeah. Well, we all want things, we all want our information now and quickly, but when it comes to decisions this important, and it really is, like, I think that's one thing, there's few, and that's why it's such an honor to be in this industry, to be quite honest, or to be a financial professional is, you said it earlier, by looking through, you're basically getting a peek like behind the curtain of somebody's entire life, and that can be very scary. When you do that, know that the person you're working with should have your best interests at heart. They should be, coming at a place from caring about you and what your goals and vision is, and that's what the plan should be structured around.
And it's so interesting. I mean, we have these conversations internally where we, see clients in our everyday life, and knowing that we know a lot about our clients, it's so important for us to for them to trust us and to trust the relationship, to trust the knowledge that we have about them. And for us, that's probably one of the biggest pieces that we don't take for granted is that we do know this. And when you come in and we're talking about things, like that's the time where we're going to talk about your information. It's not my place to tell anyone about your information. Right. If someone else knows about your financial information, it's because you told them, not us. And so that's just something we don't take lightly. And, a lot of times we just pretend, we'll be like, oh, that's great. We may just, if we're out in public, like we aren't revealing anything about you because we want you to trust this relationship and that we care about that, and we want you to feel comfortable to take that advice. And
and you should. I mean, that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Okay. So just a few, kind of as we wrap up, what are some ways? So I guess just to increase financial knowledge in general. You've touched on a lot of these as you were digging in: podcasts, blogs. Popular. There's popular people out there to watch. You can share these podcasts.
Yeah, we could throw a few in the show notes, but there's definitely there's a lot of, financial professionals that put out some great content out there. And that's stuff that I consume all the time. Because I do think, learning from others who are doing something similar it just keeps you sharp, keeps you better. Bouncing things off of other professionals is I know, Financial Design Studio works with XYPN, which is XY Planning Network, which is a great resource for planners. But there's plenty of consumer facing things too. So we'll throw some of those in the show notes. But I think just, if this is something that's piqued your interest and you're like, wow, maybe I do, need an opinion here. I would say, like we said before, do a little due diligence, figure out what you're looking for. Are you looking for a specific product? Like, I need to invest in a very specific fund for this reason. Are you looking for, I don't have disability insurance and I probably need it, or are you looking for, I need just a comprehensive look at everything that's going on and help with a plan and somebody that's going to be with me as I move through life. Those are very different things. So figure out what your needs are and then start looking for those right people and doing some homework around can really help.
Yeah, and I think we're always really careful. Like on the blog, we want to kind of give you all of these little gold nuggets of information and not pretend like this is some big sales pitch. And so like who you can trust, there are organizations, you've mentioned some of them, that you can search for advisors to make sure that who you're looking for is a good fit. So XY Planning Network, NAPFA, the CFP, like a lot of these websites, these professionals are listed on. So we will list those also in the show notes. And the other thing, that's the reason, that we're mentioning some of these organizations is that you have to be a CFP to be a part of them. Right. So XY Planning Network, you have to be a CFP to be listed in that Find an Advisor search. The other big thing is making sure they're a fiduciary. So again, with all financial advisors or financial professionals, you don't have to be a fiduciary. And so these are two pieces. So that CFP, that's one good way that you can know they have the knowledge they need. And then being a fiduciary, making sure that they are required, legally bound to act in your best interest. So those are a couple of pieces that you can kind of also decipher between. So yeah, I think this is really helpful. It just kind of gets people knowing, okay, if I'm stuck or if I've been in a place, and hearing your story of kind of how you walked through that. And not everyone's going to end up as a financial advisor. No. But
thanks, Michelle. That was very therapeutic.
Yeah, that's what I was like, actually, I kind of felt like this was a session. Really
peeling back the layers of Jake here. But no, I appreciate you letting me tell it. And for, I guess, a couple of takeaways for people out there, is it's wherever you are is totally fine. It's totally normal. If you're interested in getting a better hold of your financial life, I think we've given some great resources in this episode, but don't feel embarrassed. Like, I told you, I didn't know the difference between a Roth IRA and an IRA 5 years ago. We all start somewhere, right? And there's a mountain of information out there, some of it better than others. But, do your due diligence. Michelle just mentioned some of the great resources out there. And please, if you guys have any questions at all, I know Michelle will plug this, but reach out to us. We'll list the email address here at the end. We'd love to hear your feedback and any questions that you have regarding this show or any of our shows.
Yeah. And so I'll point to one that kind of ties to this as a resource. All of this will be in the show notes. But our last episode on kind of, just because you make a high income doesn't necessarily mean that you're on the right track. So you need to know what you're doing with that income. And so that last episode will kind of even give you further information of how to be working on these pieces. And then, if you have any questions, please send those to podcast@financialdesignstudio.com. So we always like to look for those. That'll give us some ideas and make sure that we're answering questions that are relevant to you. That's really the point of this, is that we have a question we're answering for you, and that, if you're interested, you listen to this and you walk away knowing the answer. So thanks so much for being on, Jake. This has been really great. I think really helpful.
Thanks, Michelle. Yep. Happy New Year, everybody out there in podcast land.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you hear in our podcast, please subscribe. We release new episodes every other week. And quick note, the content discussed on this podcast should not be taken as financial advice. Financial Design Studio accepts no responsibility for your individual actions or choices. But for more information about Financial Design Studio and who we are, check out our website, financialdesignstudio.com. We'll see you in the next episode.